Hi, I'm Dr. Benjamin Benulis, Chief Health Officer for Arizonans for Safe Technology. I'd like to go over the 8 problems caused by small cell wireless facilities that are being built in our neighborhoods, near our homes, schools, parks, and hospitals. And then I'd like to go over 8 serious solutions to these problems that can bring us internet connectivity without the dangers that these wireless towers provide. So serious problem number 1 is proven harm to human health, including cancer, sleep disruptions, heart problems, infertility, and DNA damage. We have over 20,000 peer-reviewed studies that show that microwave radiation and EMFs used by these small cell towers can cause these problems at levels below the FCC guidelines. Now, the wireless industry has told us that since the radiation that their towers put out is non-ionizing, that it's safe, but this is not scientifically true. We can see DNA damage from non-ionizing radiation. As you see in the picture below, on the left is a control group of DNA, that's fine. And then in the middle is DNA that's been exposed to ionizing radiation, actually 1,600 times the amount of a chest x-ray, and we can see DNA damage. But on the right, we can see DNA damage from non-ionizing radiation that would come off of a cell tower or cell phone. Big problem number 2 is that the cities are going to be held liable for the damage that these towers cause because the wireless industry has used shell companies to build the towers. And these shell companies will often have no assets. And while they may have insurance, they often have a pollution exclusion clause, which means that the radiation given off by the towers is not covered under the policy. So when the lawsuits come in, the shell companies will go bankrupt and the cities in Arizona will be left holding the financial bag. Third problem is a 20% decrease in property values. Now, studies have shown that when a tower goes up in a neighborhood, property values decrease by 20%. This is not fair to citizens and will vastly reduce city incomes from property taxes. I don't think any city can afford a 20% hit to revenue when we've already had so much damage from the COVID crisis. The fourth problem is privacy and security concerns. With 5G and small cell towers, microwave radiation can actually take near naked photos of people, can harvest data, mine data without your consent, and sell it to third parties. Your private information is no longer private with these towers. Fifth problem is that the radiation from these towers threatens not only humans, but also animals, insects, and plants. And it can kill pollinators like bees and birds. And without our pollinators, we don't have plants. Without our plants, we don't have agriculture. And without our agriculture, we don't have food. The sixth problem is too much power. While only 0.002 watts is needed to make a phone call, these towers can give off 25 million times that. Now we have an example here of a tower that went up in California 30 feet from a resident's home. And within 3 months, their children had developed radiation-related health problems. And this family had to spend over $10,000 to shield their home from the radiation caused by this tower. Seventh problem is that the FCC requires what's called a NEPA review, which is an environmental review, but none of the towers in Arizona have these and are being submitted with these. Lastly, the eighth problem is that wireless industry tells us that because of laws like HB 2365, their hands are tied and they can't say no to towers. This is actually not true, and we'll go over more on how we can say no to these towers, and the municipalities do have control. So solution number 1 is to call a moratorium. During a state of a national emergency, cities and states are allowed to call a moratorium on new wireless tower builds. Existing wireless towers are considered essential, but new builds can be stopped with a moratorium during a national emergency, such as now. Solution number 2 is to require the NEPA reviews that I talked about in problem number 7, require an environmental review of each permit for a tower. Since they aren't on there, the cities can say no to these towers since they lack a NEPA review. Third solution is to regulate the towers so that only ones that are needed. We can create what's called a "we want it" ordinance, basically having the city say no to any towers that the wireless industry can't demonstrate that there's actual need for more coverage. Fourth solution is to use wired technology for data. Right now, we're trying to basically blanket everybody and beam the internet down on them without their consent. But we can balance this by using wireless for things like text messages and phone calls, and then use wired connectivity like fiber optic cable for video, streaming data, and things like that. This allows us to have a safe balance between internet connectivity and human health. Solution number 5 is to turn the power down to safer levels. Cities can institute an ordinance that would cap the power coming out of the towers, so that it would be enough for phone calls, text messages, and basic data, nothing more, without the harmful levels of radiation caused by potentially beaming thousands of watts at people. Now, the federal government mandates that in all circumstances, wireless technology should use the minimum amount of power necessary to carry out the communication desired. So we are within the federal law on doing this. Solution number 6 is to regulate the vertical and horizontal distance of antennas. So the fact that these towers are so close to the ground and so close to homes is causing a lot of health harm. And if we can regulate how tall, how high the towers can be and how big the antennas can be, we can reduce a lot of the harm caused by the large amounts of radiation coming off of them. Solution number 7 is to build out the fiber optic networks, and the cities can regulate the fiber optic wired connectivity as a public utility, and they can be a revenue source for the city. Fiber is faster, safer, and more secure, and can easily be brought to homes, offices, churches, schools, and everywhere. Using a wired connection will not only be safer for humans, but actually faster and be a revenue source for our cities in the long term. Solution number 8 is capping the power with a fuse and fining wireless companies for going over the power caps. Cities can legally set and enforce safe power levels and charge fines for violating these power levels, and will bring more revenue to the city and prevent our wireless companies from harming us with too high levels of radiation. Just remember that our hands are not tied. The law is on our side. There are ways to reduce our radiation exposure and to safe levels and bring great wired connectivity to our cities and towns in Arizona. If you'd like to learn more or you'd like to join our movement, you can visit Arizonans for Safe Technology. Our website is azforsafetech.org. That's AZ, the number 4, safetech.org. Thank you.